Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and this is my card for this week's Color Throwdown Challenge, of which I'll have all the info on my blog. And I'm starting off with this little mini jar of Nouveau Embellishment Mousse in Pure Platinum. I only have these minis from a previous Simon Says kit in certain colors. They come in much, much larger jars, but this color I only have this little mini of. And then I'm using this little, it's called an ink blusher, but you could totally use a makeup sponge. I was actually looking, I know I have a bag of makeup sponges that I never use for makeup, and I've hoarded them for years because they're nice to use for crafts and things, and in the process, couldn't find them, but I found these little ink blushers, which are basically the same thing. So I wanted to try sponging the ink with this over a stencil onto some white cardstock, and it worked. I've mentioned before I don't like really using my fingers with like anything like this, so I was like, I wonder if I can just use a sponge and kind of sponge it. I have done other I've done another video where I just picked up the product with the spatula and scraped it over the stencil, which I really like, but I didn't really want that texture this time. I just wanted the color. So I'm just picking up the embellishment mousse, and I've also said this before, the mousse, that's kind of a misleading name. It's more firm than a mousse product. Like, I think light and airy when I think mousse. So anywho, picked up the product with the sponge and sponged it over this stencil, and I did it on the white cardstock, and it's gorgeous. It's kind of got that silvery platinum look, but in certain light it's almost just shimmery. It doesn't look very gray at all. It's so pretty. So I sponged over the stencil, I let it dry, which didn't take very long at all, and then I trimmed down the piece to about 4 inches by 5 1/4. And then I pulled out a couple of Simon Says die sets. I have the Painted Friend die, and I ran that through my Big Shot machine with Simon's steel gray cardstock, and I die cut that 3 times so I can stack these together to just give it a bit more depth and dimension. So I'm using my Tonic Nouveau adhesive, which, if you guys have been watching any of my videos the last couple weeks, I've been using this quite a lot, and I'm really liking it. So with die cuts like this, it's so easy. You could use just about anything to adhere them because there's so many like thicker areas on the dies, so you don't have to fiddle as much. So just apply a thin line of adhesive and then stack them all together. So I stacked all 3 die cuts, and then I'm going to adhere the little dot for the eyes here. So I've got a little bit more adhesive, and I wasn't thinking, and I applied adhesive to 2 of them, and I was like, great, what am I going to do to like pick these up? So I grabbed my reverse tweezers to stack these together. Once I had that done, I can set that aside, and then I've got the Simon Says Forget Me Not Flowers die set, which I die cut from some white cardstock, just the flowers themselves. And then this is where I started experimenting a little bit, and I was like, I put my finger in the Nouveau Mousse, and I was like, I just don't like it. So I tried the sponge first, and I was like, I don't like how that's looking on this flower. It just wasn't moving the way I wanted it to. So then I tried again, put my finger in it, tried to rub it around on the flower, same thing. I still wasn't liking how it was looking. So then I got the sponge wet. I had a cup of water up above my card front here. So I got the sponge just a little bit wet, and that I liked a lot more. I need to experiment with these mousse, like this mousse product more, because you can like mix it with water, you can create shimmer mist with it, you can do a ton of things with this stuff. So with the wet sponge, I just applied that shimmer because I didn't want the flowers to be as dark. I still wanted them to look more white, but I liked the shimmer. So I applied it with that, and I noticed, of course, because I was using a wet sponge, it was causing the cardstock to warp a little. And I was liking that because these are flower die cuts. I wanted them to have a little bit more, I didn't want them to be flat. I wanted them to be curled a little bit. So I just laid them onto this piece of foam I have. You could totally use a mouse pad, anything like that, but in the end, it's irrelevant. And sprayed them quite heavily with water. And then I started with my Teflon bone folder to start like curling them up. And then I was like, again, I don't like this either. I was like, I can get just as much, bend and curl on these with my fingers. So that's what I did. I just picked them up with my fingers after the water had sat for about a minute to really soak into the paper and soften it. And then I just kind of bent the petals a little bit and curled everything just a bit. I didn't want them like heavily curled up, but just not flat. So curled them a little bit, and then I held them with my tweezers again and just used my heat tool to dry them, because otherwise they're going to take forever to dry. And then I had die cut the centers for these flowers from some black cardstock, and just picked those up with my tweezers, and then applied little tiny dabs of that Nouveau adhesive so I could adhere those all into place. So once I have the centers adhered, I'd also die cut the little leafy branch that comes with that die set from Simon's green leaf cardstock. So die cut that several times, so I had quite a few of them, and then I'm going to figure out how I'm going to lay this out on my card front. So I'd filled around a bit. Once I was kind of happy with how I was going to do everything, I started adhering these flowers with some foam tape. And a couple of them, I'm going to double up the foam tape so they're popped up pretty high on the card front. And then the other ones, I'm just going to pop on with one layer of foam tape. So I decided to use all 4 of the flowers. My original idea was only going to use 3 of them, but then I just couldn't toss the 3rd one, or the 4th one, sorry. So adhered all of those into place, and then I'm going to start figuring out how I'm going to adhere all these little leafy branches. So I decided I'm just going to start like kind of tucking them in here and there under the flowers. And I'm only applying adhesive to kind of, well, the lower area, I guess you'd call it, of these little leaf die cuts, because I want the upper parts to kind of stick out and give it even more texture. So just small amounts of adhesive, and I'm just going to tuck them behind the flowers here and there and in between, and apply the adhesive so it'll stick into place, and then it'll hold everything into place. And then with this last larger piece, I wasn't really liking how that was looking, so I just took my scissors and trimmed off the bottom portion of it. And then I applied my adhesive. I'm going to stick that into place, and then I'm going to adhere the last little one, because same thing. It's like they were all die cut, they're all sitting there. I couldn't not use all of them. So yeah, with me, it's always more is more. It's never less is more. It's always more is more. So got everything adhered, and then I'm going to finally adhere the friend die cut onto the card front here. So apply some more adhesive and then tuck it in where I want it to be, and then press that down, and then I can adhere the dot to the eye. And once I had that adhered, I was like, I need to add just one little bit more of embellishment. So I grabbed my little Doodlebug sprinkles, the lily white sparkle ones, and this was where I practiced less is more. I only adhered 3. I did think about adhering more, you know, just adding a few sprinkles thoroughly around the card like I usually do, but I left it at the 3. I thought I had enough shimmer going on with all that embellishment mousse and whatnot. So I then grabbed the Simon Says I have one left of these 120-pound pre-scored and pre-cut A2 size cards. So I used that, and then I'm using a sentiment from the, what is the name of this set? The Friendship Blooms stamp set. So I'm inking that up with Simon's Steel Gray ink, and I'm stamping that onto the inside of the card, and then pressing down that crease really well with my Teflon bone folder. And then I thought about adhering the card front directly to the card, but I wanted, again, a little bit more dimension to it. So instead I adhered foam tape to the back of the card front, and then adhered that to my card, and that finished it off. So as always, I'll have links below the video to my blog post with info for the color challenge and links to all the supplies used. So check out the description box below the video if you are interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye!